Yes. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome along then to round whatever we're on here for Miami here in the USA. This has been a very quickly put together stream here, but I'm sure that we will be able to provide you all the entertainment necessary as usual. So we've got this 19-turn circuit here, brand new to Formula One this season, of course, and it's the second time the FRS has multiple visits to one nation in a season. The other time being Italy in season 4. When, of course, we used Imola and Monza. In terms of action zones, let's have a look down here at turn 11, where we've got this high braking zone, or a very heavy braking zone, I should say, that then rolls round into a long right-hander. Then, further down into the circuit, we have turn 17, which is at the end of the final DRS straight, which then comes around another couple of corners, 18, 19, to then finish out the lap. Expect that to be another area where we have some good overtaking. We've then got the hard, medium, and soft tyres, of course, as per usual, with a difference of around about 0.7 of a second from soft to medium, and then about 0.6 tenths of a second, I should say, from medium to hard, and then predictions of 28, 19, and 10 usage from hard, medium to soft, respectively. Now then, whilst we talk about all of this in this brand new circuit, which is very exciting, very fun, unfortunately for the drivers at the moment, it's perhaps a bit less than we are going to have a look at Silver Arrow. Why? Oh.
I can save our blushes because we have been completely muted since the start because OBS was defaulted slightly differently to what I expected it to be, and I imagine you can't see anything now either because I've just pressed something which broke something. So
are we live now? Can people hear us?
People can hear us now, and I can only apologise for that. They did hear your intro on the intro screen. It was only once we switched to the game that we lost the audio output. Apologies for that. We have rapidly thrown this together this evening, and I did not have my OBS set up quite how I wanted it to be. There will be a couple more moments where I will need to throw up the pause screen while I just fix a couple more bits and pieces through qualifying, so apologies for that. I'll try to wait for people to be back into the pits.
Absolutely. So there we go then, everybody. That has been our somewhat chaotic but typical FRS shambly fashion start to the stream this evening. We're all, it's the end of a triple header in real F1. We're all tired. We're all weary and wary. Not that that's much of an excuse, but there we go. So we've got then Silver Arrow currently leading the pace, which is something that is a pleasant surprise. I think it's fair to say those of us who've been watching or taking part here in the FRS for quite some time will remember remember, of course, Silver Arrow is one of our earlier champions here in PC Division 1, and they're currently staking a good claim towards pole position so far, because Fraser, of course, driver who has been incredibly quick so far this season, has won the vast majority of races. I would tell you where they came in Silverstone last time round. I suspect it was a win as well, but unfortunately the standings for PC Division 1 have not been updated to reflect that Silverstone result. But certainly, the only blemish on their record so far this season has been Austria, where they lost out to Booth in the Mercedes. And Booth has certainly started to become a much more regular contender. That being said, they have retired from this qualifying session, so that particular Mercedes will be starting from the back of the grid. If Silver Arrow starts from the front, then we'll have a nice, well, Silver Arrow bookending, pun intended. So, in terms of then the drivers that we have got out on circuit at the moment who are doing all the fun, interesting bits and pieces, well, we've got currently Coral coming into the pits right this moment in time, or at least you'd imagine they're coming in. No, they're not. They're going to continue around again. They make a slight improvement, go from P7 to P6. And in terms of everybody else, well, there's a bit of an indecision as far as tyres are concerned. False Tax coming out on intermediate tyres right now, but waiting in the garage is Naktrack and Angelo's, or Angelo, I believe that's supposed to say Angelo.
Civic, I can tell you that one.
Civic, okay, well there we go. Civic, also known as, but there we are. So Civic then in the pits on the soft tyre, waiting to go out. The same with Luke now as well. So clearly, whilst it is a bit drizzly conditions right now, things are still pretty good as far as the conditions are concerned, because clearly some drivers are thinking about that changeover to softs already. Say already, we are now near enough 8 minutes into this qualifying session, and therefore we have quite some time has elapsed so far. Not quite halfway, but we're getting pretty close.
I can tell you, because I know you can't see them anymore on the overlay, it is saying that we only have a 20% chance of rain continuing to the end. In fact, with 59% chance of rain now, and then it looks like it's going to shift towards cloud towards the end of the session. It might be why some people are sitting in. See what the weather does, throw it out at the last minute if it doesn't stop raining, otherwise bolt some dries on and go for a run.
Absolutely. So there we are then.
I'm going to quickly throw up the pause menu just so that I can fix your view for you. Apologies to the viewers, because it will, because this game hasn't been fixed yet to say, hey, when someone tabs out, don't throw the pause menu up automatically. It still does, so apologies for that.
Well, there we are then. So Silver Arrow continues to lead the way right now. They also, as well as Fraser, have now switched over to soft tyres in the garage. They'll get that live timing data, of course, on their screen, which will tell them what the offset is in terms of the pace from those softs to the intermediates. And just like that, the two of them have the exact same idea. Leave the pits at basically the exact same time, but then, of course, with the McLaren being further down the pit lane, and the Mercedes being at the top end, being Constructors' champions last year, of course, that means then that Silver Arrow is behind Fraser for this next lap. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing as far as Silver Arrow is concerned. It means they'll get just a little bit better track conditions because, of course, there will be just that fraction of a second longer in terms of the track drying out and all that sort of a thing as well. But hopefully we will see some good times coming out here from these two drivers who seem to be right on the top of their game so far today. And would you look at that? I've now got the stream back up. So there we go. Coral then currently on some personal bests. With Cavino currently setting purples in the middle of the circuit, although it is Spike in the Alpine, still on intermediate tyres, I should point out, who is doing a very good job indeed, is likely to go top of the timesheets here, but with drivers now going out on the soft tyre, that does mean we are likely to see some major steps forward in terms of the overall pace. So real question here is going to be, is Spike going to complete the lap? Yes, they will. And where will this pop then? We are expecting the very front. And there it is. Yes, 1.5 seconds quicker than what Silver Arrow's been able to achieve so far. So surely then, at this stage, if the intermediate is still capable of setting a time quite as quick as that, you're going to have to hope on the parts of Fraser and Silver Arrow and those others who are risking the soft tyre now
Spike
that it is going to...
gone round. Sector 1.
Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear. Spike has gone round, but they're not the only one. There's also an Aston Martin who has gone round facing the wrong way. And that is Angelo. They have been disqualified. So they have tried to spin round at the final turn, get themselves back into the pit lane, presumably to get some different tyres on the car or something like that, or just to reset. But it's ended up meaning they're disqualified from the session. Dear, oh dear. That is not...
There.
Oh, Silver Arrow is round. Sorry to interrupt you there, Ghost. But yeah, Silver Arrow is round there. So they have completely botched this particular lap. Fraser seems to be carrying on without any troubles whatsoever. They, in fact, have set a purple first sector 1 second faster than what has been done by Spike previously at the top of the timing sheet, so let's continue to keep an eye on that. Naktrack, another driver who is out there risking it for the biscuit, and they have gone 8/10 quicker than Spike in that first sector. I do love these new graphics. I want to make a big thank you on stream to Raymond once again for making these for us. This has been absolutely top draw material and something that the FRS has over pretty much every other league going. And Fraser is also something that we have over every other league going because they are mighty fast. Look at this then, 1.5 seconds quicker by the time they reach the end of the second sector, never mind by the time they reach the end of the lap. And so it has now been beaten in the first sector by Hugh Sam. Hugh Sam has beaten Fraser's time. So we will keep an eye on Hugh Sam's progress here to see whether that's genuine pace or whether that's just track evolution. But round the final turn comes Fraser, and it is fastest there. Look at that. That's a 1:31.4. That is significantly quicker than what Spike was able to accomplish before. I say that, it's about 1.5 seconds or so quicker, which is, of course, around about what Spike was able to produce over Silver Arrow themselves with that intermediate tyre. So lots of pace in Fraser's car today. Silver Arrow, I'm sure, will be looking to... Yep, they're in the pits right now, going to get some new tyres on. Hugh Sam, we can see on screen at the moment, and they are currently powering their way down that back straight. DRS not open on that car. Clearly, conditions not good enough yet for it to be re-enabled. But as they come round turn 17, of course, as we mentioned in the intro there, one of those areas we expect to see some overtaking happening. DRS has now been re-enabled. You can see there on the top of the screen. And across the line comes Hugh Sam. They've just missed out to Fraser there by 0.2 of a second overall. But still a very good time regardless. Naktrack has also been able to complete a lap at some point around here as well. And has set time that's just 0.3 shy of what Fraser's been able to do. But then suddenly coming in with the big old knockers worth of times there. That is Luke coming across the line with a 1:30.8. I suspect that may have been helped out by the use of DRS because, of course, it was enabled much earlier in their lap versus others. Fraser set a purple first sector but then gone slower in the middle sector versus their personal best time. Everybody now at this point is out on the soft tyre. Fraser goes into the pits, so they are not going to be gracing us with another time in the near future. They will be able to get another one down by the end of this session. Of that, I'm fairly certain. And it's something they're going to be wanting to do, of course. In terms of then other drivers out on laps at the moment, well, Cavino is currently on a lap, and you can see there on that graphic on the screen, they are currently the fastest through the first sector. And with that being said and done, let's see what happens when they get towards the end of second sector here. It's another purple sector, 0.8 overall faster than what has been set down by Luke so far. And now with the use of DRS on that Ferrari, where of course it is in the real world Ferrari's home race in Monza, what is the only Ferrari in PC Division 1 here today going to be able to cook up for us here? So round the final couple of corners they come. Not really much of a corner, these last couple here, 18 and 19, but that doesn't stop Cavino breaking into the 120s. The first driver to do so far in this qualifying session.
It's worth saying that last couple of corners, there isn't much to them, but there is a bump. Might be worth keeping an eye out during the race for people going around there. I imagine it's what caught Civic out. You can end up spinning into the pit lane if you end up beached. We do allow reset to track in that situation, but I think either A, Civic got himself beached and didn't realise he could reset, or maybe he just ended up backwards in the pit lane and had to drive backwards. I don't know.
Well, it was actually, I managed to catch it on the onboard of another driver. I must confess, I forget which one it was, but they were basically pointed the wrong way on the inside of that corner. So rather than out there where the pit lane is, they were actually on the inside, on sort of the curb of the wall on turn 18. And so they were then trying to drive.
Power, I imagine.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. And then they were trying, it seemed as if, from the very brief glimpse of them I got as that car I was watching went past, it then seemed to be that, they were trying to maybe get their way back into the pits instead. Maybe the end of a flying lap. But there we are.
You have to apologise. for the pull screen coming up on the screen again. I've been told I am incredibly low. Normally I'm the one who is too loud, so I turned myself down, but apparently I was whisper quiet.
There we are then. See, you silly sausage. What are we going to do with you? I'm joking, Ghost. I love you very much. So, in terms of what we can see on the circuit right now, then, of course, because we had that earlier part of the session where intermediates were the tyre of choice, then just bear in mind that means we're going to have more soft sets available in the race in case there are any safety cars or things of that nature. We've got Cavino going very slowly in the final sector now. I don't know whether that's down to just getting out of the way or whether in low fuel mode or something like that. But there they are. They are crawling along with just 1.5 minutes left to go in this session. I suspect, looking at their inputs, there's an awful lot of brake and accelerator being used at the same time. So maybe trying to recharge the ERS as much as possible before then starting a second push lap on the same set of tyres. That looks to be what's happening there for Cavino. I'll keep you abreast of that, but on your screen at the moment, you can see Cattle King coming through the last corner of Sector 2, setting a purple second sector indeed. 1 second quicker overall than what Cavino has been able to manage. So I suspect here that the fastest time is going to be for the driver who keeps their head and comes across the line last.
Do have a little bubble of traffic there going through Sector 2 at the moment. 57 seconds left in the session. It's going to be a shootout.
It certainly will. It certainly will. Coral is currently at the back of that particular queue. They're all starting to jostle with position now, with Fraser initially ahead of that queue. Now has allowed another car past them. I believe that's Spike in the Alpine. It is. So this is going to be very close now between all these drivers. And let's watch Spike then. They're coming around to finish out what will be most likely their final lap of this session. Because their ERS is now completely run, and it's a 127.8 for Spike. So, of course, our two-time reigning champion in PC Division 1 has set down a marker, and now everybody else will seek to follow it. Fraser will be the first driver to get across the line there, but in terms of drivers currently on laps that are doing incredibly well, we've got the Alfa Romeo there of Knacktrack coming around the final turn. Big accident just behind them, you could see there, that being false tax into the wall. They are trying to get themselves sorted now. They've finished the session, according to the timing graphics, so that's now an AI. Silver Arrow comes across the line to set a new best time, a 127.6, so a slight improvement there over what Spike was able to manage, but Fraser is currently going fastest of anybody in that first sector. They're coming through the second now. They've just got a few more corners to go. They've got this sweeping section here in turn 11, of course, and now it's this tight and twisty Mickey Mouse section it's been referred to here, especially up through these corners here, turns 14 and 15. And then, of course, 16 here before we then have that run down towards the next sector. It is 3/10 up on what Spike has been, Silver Arrow has been able to manage over the course of the laps so far. It's all going to come down to then how draggy Fraser's setup is relative to Silver Arrow's. And then, of course, the heavy braking here into turn 17. Onto the brakes goes Fraser, into the corner, manages to hit the apex nicely indeed. Powers out on exit, and now up towards the line they go. Is this going to be our new provisional pole position time? Yes, it is. A 127 dead from Fraser. A massive 6/10 improvement over what Silver Arrow has been able to achieve so far. Spike has retired from the session. Most drivers have finished now. The only ones still going on circuit being Nordy, who has now disappeared from our timing graphic there. Coral going past your screens now to finish out the session, going 9th place with their time there. And now into the pits comes Knacktrack, the last driver not officially finished in this session. So therefore, that is your qualifying session all done with. Fraser is able to lead home the field with another pole position. And then Silver Arrow alongside on the front row. Making a welcome return to the front row is Silver Arrow, with then Spike behind in 3rd place. Luke, Knacktrack, Hugh Sam, Nordy, Cattle King, Coral, Archduke Oregano, Kevino, Falstax, Raymond, Booth, and Civic rounding out the order. Civic, of course, disqualified from the session because they drove the wrong way trying to get back towards the pits.
Well, that was exciting.
It was very exciting. Now, given that we have a broadcast formation lap, I'm going to ask a question to you now. Ghost, have you removed speech volume in your game settings?
No.
We're going to have an overlap of myself and David Croft then, or Alex Jakes if you are a cultured person and you have changed.
I'm cultured, I believe, unless the latest patch has decided to revert such things. So you may
It
find
certainly
yourselves...
reverted some things. I mean, I'm experiencing DLSS here for some reason, even though I explicitly had that switched off. So I'm going to change that myself now.
I also have no controller input because I grabbed my Xbox controller and threw it across the room in a fit of rage because it wouldn't stop vibrating during that session. And apparently Formula One is not accepting my keyboard as an input, so I'm going to hold everyone up and not be able to mute anything, so we might have to have you fight with the dulcet tones of Mr. Jax.
There we are then. So Alex Jakes and I will be competing for your attention here on the formation lap, here at the Miami Autodrome, or whatever else they've called it, the Hard Rock Stadium Circuit, the Car Park Grand Prix, whatever it is. And around we will go then. So again, as I say, 19 turns on this circuit. We've got the first sector. It's an interesting challenge, mix of sort of high and medium speed corners with the occasional heavier braking zone, I should say. Sector 2 then is, in the first part at least, down to the straight line speed setup of your car, all the way down to turn 11. As we see blue skies here on the circuit, so an indication there that we may not have too much in the way of rain, though we will find out, of course, in the not-too-distant future through the use of our handy graphics. But then, of course, in the second part of that second sector, that's when everything really slows down. All the slow-speed corners on the circuit, bar one, in that second part of the second sector. Then, of course, Sector 3, that is again dominated by straight line speed, with 18, 19 not being much of a corner there, a bit like Turn 2 at Austria, but then, of course, 17 is that big heavy braking zone. You're going to need some good straight line braking performance there to be able to brake as late as possible, either for the moves or for defense or just overall lap time. We've now got 7 seconds until we go into it, and I'm looking forward to this one.
I did manage to grab the voice down, by the way, so you
excellent
competition, hopefully.
Hopefully I'm not. So, away we go. Unfortunately, I am the pleb, and I have left speech volume on, so I am having to compete with Alex Jakes on my own. So there we are. I'm going to switch that off myself. But yes, now, as Fraser leads them round, we've got them and Silver Arrow starting on the hard tyres. Spike all the way down to Hugh Sam on the mediums. Nordy, interestingly, on the softs to start us off. And now then, I've lost that timing tower once more.
Of course, it takes it away.
Of course it does, because, broadcast formation lap, it should only broadcast the first few seconds, and then the last few seconds as well. So we know what the top end of the grid are doing as far as tyre strategy is concerned. Nordy, as I say, that first driver on the softs. I believe there's one other driver who was on softs as well, as the cars now start to line up in their grid slots, getting ready to go. We've got the McLaren, Mercedes, Alpine, Red Bull, Alfa Romeo, Alpha Tauri, and then it's only at the next car that you then get a repeat in the teams. So in terms of Constructors' Championship result here, expect to see cars making their way through from the back if we're going to get good results here for teams. But we now got 3, 4, 5 red lights. Lights out, and it's go, go, go here in Miami. And it looks like a very good start for Fraser. They have been completely unbothered by Silver Arrow into turn 1, who then makes contact.
Immediate safety car.
Immediate safety car as well. That is very interesting. False Tax is out of the race already in the wall on the start, so they must have an enormous problem there. Luke being a great beneficiary off the start there. They've been able to get up into second place. Meanwhile, Spike has lost out, trying to get a move done on Silver Arrow. There was body contact side by side. That meant that they have then filtered down the order behind Hugh Sam. And Silver Arrow has lost that one position then to Luke as well. So things staying relatively competitive in the top order. Unfortunate that we've got the safety car straight off the bat, but if that's going to be the case where we've got a driver retiring on the start-finish straight, the game is going to just throw that straight away. It's shades of races we've seen in the real world plenty of times before. So all the drivers now will drive to a Delta. If they had overfueled the car at all, this is going to be an absolute nightmare worst-case scenario for them, because these cars will now just get heavier and heavier. There's no real way, without causing an issue for the car behind at least, to get yourself into neutral and then try and burn off as much fuel as possible. Of course, that's going to raise the temperature of your engine in doing that as well. So therefore, it's going to reduce performance unless you can get those temperatures then back under control by the time we get racing once more. So, with all that being said and done there, Ghosts, as we see the safety car graphic on the top left of our picture, also provided by Raymond and his technical wizardry, and we thank him very much for it, because of course the game doesn't decide to show us a safety car graphic in any way, shape or form.
Should we take a quick look at the weather?
Yes, let's take a look at the weather, absolutely. So, as you can see there then, we've got a relatively low chance of rain throughout the rest of this race. Highest percentage is 10% towards the end of this race. Of course, with it being a 50% race, likelihood is we're only going to go for around about 45 minutes or so, which of course is going to be of blessed relief to you, I would imagine there, Ghost.
Yes. I need to make it to my race, as we've got some people pitting. Looks like they're jumping from those mediums onto the hards. Interesting choices. Personally, I think the medium's the better race tyre. But you can go quite long on those hards, so we'll have to keep an eye on those guys. Maybe a bit of damage
Absolutely,
to repair.
yeah. Yeah, and I think this is then one of those instances where, as we were saying at the top of the show, the hard tyres can, in theory, go for about 28 laps. Now, given that we've done lap 1, that means there's 28 to go. Could it be that if there are no more safety cars, we end up seeing the likes of Cavino, Nakchak, and Civic at the back there, trying to make their way all the way to the end of this race, have the extra pit stop over everybody else, and then try and just hope that that is enough in terms of a time offset versus then those cars who will be coming out on fresher tyres in the later stage of this Grand Prix?
It'll be a hell of a run. I wouldn't put it past Civic. He's got a bit of a reputation in Division 3 of running incredibly long on tyres. It's pulled off for him twice. It did not pull off for him last week. He had a puncture. But if anyone's going to run long, it'll be him. I just wonder whether they'll have the pace and the traffic to keep close enough to those guys up the front.
Absolutely. So there we are then. So we've got a mixture of strategies going on here. Luke, of course, is deciding to stay. Oh, and look at this. Safety car only out for 1 lap. Crikey dingo, the game has learned. Not all incidents need to have 3 laps of the race being completely stopped. That's amazing. Well, there we are then. So, Fraser's now going to try and get some temperature back into their hard tyres. Now, that will be easier to do than if we were later in the race, of course, because there is going to be more tread on that tyre than if they had started to wear it down over the course of this race. And Luke then is staying nice and close in behind there on those mediums, ready to pounce at any moment. They're going to want to try and get past Fraser as soon as possible and then make the use of those medium tyres and the extra performance that they provide. Same will be, of course, the case for Hugh Sam and Spike, who will have Silver Arrow to clear before they get to Fraser. And we're away once more. Look at this then. Away we go. And up at the front, Luke is very close, but probably not quite close enough down into turn number 1 to make anything happen there on Fraser. And now they're going to need to stick nice and close as they go through and try and get everything all set up to overtake Fraser then. And it could well happen soon. Look at this. Look how close they are. It's about our 10th and a half as they head into the left-hander. It's a big slide. Big oversteer moment there for Luke. Just pushing the car too much, and that is their overtake chances, and in fact their points finishing chances potentially out of the window.
Apologies for the slightly shoddy camera work there. I was desperately trying to grab Luke back, but because he was sliding down the order, his position was constantly moving.
Well, there we are then. It's, oh, look at this then. Nordy and P6, they have been able to get alongside Archie Corrigano here on the run down towards turn number 11. They sweep in and around the outside in that heavy braking zone, and using that soft tyre versus hard tyres, it was practically a formality. Round they go then, and now they need to catch up to Spike ahead. Their teammate, of course, in the Alpine. They cut turn 14 there, or 15, I should say. And don't seem to have gotten any time penalty for it, so that'll be lucky for them, but they're going to need to make sure they don't make that mistake again. Certainly not in a hurry. Meanwhile, further up the order, look at Spike now, closing in on the back of Silver Arrow, who has already been overtaken by Hugh Sam over the course of this lap as well. And that means now 2 medium tyre runners are right behind the race leader. 1.2 seconds, 1.3 seconds the gap now from Hugh Sam to Fraser up in front. But that extra performance of the medium tyre at this earlier stage in the Grand Prix should mean that they will be able to get themselves up the order relatively shortly. So then,
got those critical groups forming, those 1 second gaps coming, so the DRS won't be available to some people.
Whoa, big slide for Hugh Sam! They are round, and they have treated that throttle pedal with just a little bit too much gumption. And, well, then they now have to wait for the entire field to come through. There goes Cattle King, and that then means that Hugh Sam can continue. But that is a major shame for the AlphaTauri driver. They're going to need to hope and pray for a safety car now. And now, that means the top 2 fight is one that was very familiar to us last season. It is Fraser versus Spike.
It's unfortunate. It looks like the first sector's punishing some people. Now a lot of people have been tempted to go with this controversial 0-0 setup, where you are riding on eggshells through that first sector, but you reap the reward down those back straights. I think we can see it. I think Spike might be running reasonably low, if I'm honest, based on the speed that they showed last lap. Either that or they threw a whole load of battery at the problem.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem to be. I mean, if we just look now at this time delta as both Spike and Fraser head down the back straight, I mean, whatever they're doing, they must be at relatively similar wing levels, because they are not really changing that gap at all. It was through the corners where Spike was gaining a bit of time, which you would expect given that they're on that medium tyre, but didn't seem to be very much at all. Only seemed to really be around about a tenth, maybe two. DRS has now been enabled with Fraser crossing the start-finish line. Spike sets a new fastest lap of the Grand Prix, so they must have been quicker than Fraser that last lap, but doesn't seem to have been by a convincing amount, at least not so far. Maybe as they head through this first sector here. Now, a thought that I've had with this first sector, could it be a bit like, say, Spain in round one, when people were spinning round in turn number 3 because those tyre temperatures were just getting a bit too out of control, particularly on the carcasses?
There's certainly the potential. I know that you run very low pressures still in the game, in spite of the patch, which said that it made them easier to manage. I know I run minimums on the front and I think 3 clicks on the rear, so if you've got much more than that, you may well be wearing those rears out. Either that or it's just too little rear wing.
Absolutely, or maybe too much even, because now headed into turn 11, Fraser has continued to just pull a gap out on them. Meanwhile, further down the order, Luke has been able to get a position done on Knack Track, and so the Red Bull driver moves ahead of the Alfa Romeo driver. This is a good bit of recovery from Luke, of course, after that earlier spin in the race, or not spin, but going off into the runoff area by quite some distance. So far, in fact, they were practically in the next state. And Americans, I apologise, I don't know your geography well enough. I don't know which one is next to Florida. But there we are. So down the back straight they go then, along with Booth. You can see there in the back of shot is Luke trying to get back onto terms with these guys further up the field here. Booth still very close to the back of Archduke in front of them, who is very close, in fact, to the back of Nordy. So a little bit of a DRS train starting to form between these guys. That's going to mean that Archduke's going to need to get a move done on Nordy sooner rather than later in order to then try and get the rest of the field up into a position where they can overtake as well. Because, of course, with the likes of Booth, they can't really make any way forward whilst the DRS is being used by the car ahead of them. There's no benefit to be gained by just matching the DRS use of the car in front of you. So, through this twisty section towards the end of Sector 1 we go then. It's a wider entry for Booth there. They've been able to make more use of the circuit, really. And look at this. It's also been a loss of DRS for Archduke. They have, or I say that, yeah, no, it is. Yes, so they have lost the DRS. Booth now gets it open. Down into turn 11 we go. The Mercedes alongside the Aston Martin. And into that braking zone we go then. And it's a good overtake for Booth. They then plough into the next corner, turn number 12, and they stay ahead of the Aston Martin. They don't get that opportunity to counter-attack at all, not get alongside the Mercedes, anything like that, and instead, Booth now has Nordy in their sights.
So he'll be dumping a bit of battery, hoping to get into DRS in time for this straight. Has he managed it? Is Booth swing going to open? Yes, it
has, yes. Open at the rear there, and you can see on the back of that Alpine in front as well, there is a flashing red light. That means that Nordy has less than 10% DRS remaining. Not the case, of course, for the likes of Booth and Archduke, whose cars have conspicuously unlit LEDs at the back, and therefore they're in a very good strategic position versus not Silver Arrow ahead, I should say, Nordy ahead, to be able to try and then get something to happen here. Now, Silver Arrow, speaking of them, they are very close to the back of Spike further up the order, and Spike has been steadily losing ground versus Fraser. This could be another instance of Fraser just running away with it here, unless, of course, the likes of those drivers on the hard tyre from the safety car period, so Knack Track, Cavino and Civic, whether they're able to maybe make anything happen towards the end of this race if they can start to get closer towards the front, and then of course the front start to pit and get new tyres on. Now, of course, the thing that's going to help those drivers along the way is if they can get overtakes happening and get into some clean air as well. Now, DRS open for Booth here as the Mercedes chases on after the Alpine in front. The Alpine, of course, on those soft tyres, so they will have a drop-off in pace, I'd imagine, around about this time, maybe in the next 2 laps. Although that's not what happens. It's a spin for Nordy in turn number 12. They have nowhere to go. They're hit round. They're hit by the... Oh, that's the Red Bull of Raymond. Raymond, whilst you've provided us with graphics, you've provided us with a DNF for Nordy, and the red there just clouted straight into the front right corner of the stationary Alpine. That then means that we've got a virtual safety car. Everybody basically grounding to a halt there. Look at that. So no prizes for guessing whether the safety car glitch is in order at the moment, with the cars basically coming to a crawl. But now, round the final corner comes Fraser and Spike into the pits. So Spike then, presumably going to go on to hard tyres to the end of this race. Silver Arrow decides to stay out as well. Booth staying out too. Let's have a look at everyone further down the order. Luke has decided to go in for a fresh set of hard tyres as well. Or that's, again, me assuming it's going to be hards on Luke's car. And with it being a virtual safety car as well, of course, this means that those pitting are going to gain time versus then others who will maybe have to pit during normal racing conditions later on. So that means that then any potential massive undercut on the likes of Fraser could be even bigger now. But of course, it's not going to be as big, of course, as what Knactrack, Cavino and Civic will be able to manage, because they, of course, already passed the likes of Luke and Spike and Cattle King.
I think there's some damage there as well, because Remen and Cattle King were both pitting with hard tyres already on the car, so I think they've swapped over to mediums likely, and I'm not sure on the lifespan of those mediums, but I think there's possibly some damage going on there that caused those pits. And we've got drive-throughs for Cattle King and Remen, who were just in the pits. That is unfortunate. I believe that will probably be the glitch.
Yeah, and Hugh Sam has just overtaken Cattle King on circuit as well. I was just on board with Cattle King on my point of view. Saw Hugh Sam sail around the outside. So again, glitch is in operation.
Civic.
Oh no, it's Green Flag Racing. Green Flag Racing, in fact. So we've been
of course,
completely blindsided
drive-throughs
by that.
came through.
Yeah, exactly. So so there we go. So Spike is past Civic in fairly short order then. So that means then that Spike, if they can get onto terms with Cavino and Knactrack, they are then suddenly in the driving seat, pardon the pun, to then go on and win this race. So that is a sudden stroke of potential strategic genius on the part of Spike there. A bit of sideways action for them in terms of just trying to get heat into the tyres, weaving on the back straight. But we are focusing instead on Civic, who's behind them, of course, has that penalty. Whether they're going to take it in the immediate future or not, I don't know. But if they do, well, into the pits they come. So that is most likely going to be a penalty being served. So into the pits comes Civic. Keep you abreast of that information, but right now on circuit the battles are, well, not that numerous really, to be honest with you. The closest cars on circuit right now are Cavino and Knactrack, who have been practically joined at the hip ever since the safety car, and even since the race start, you could argue, with then Cattle King being another driver close to another at the moment, but they have now gone into the pits, so they will fall back away from Hugh Sam. And that was, of course, the car they were closest to on circuit at the moment. So Cavino versus Knactrack. Ferrari power in both of these cars, though, of course, equal performance in this race. DRS available, of course, for Cavino now, and they will start to close in on the back of Knactrack. I can tell you without any spoilers of, what the actual figures are, but the two cars are very closely aligned in terms of their ERS value, so there's no major advantage one way or the other. So this is going to come down predominantly to the use of DRS for the car behind, and then, of course, tyre management and speed through the corners on the part of Cavino if they are to try and stay nice and close. But a big oversteering moment there through 14 and 15 means they've lost some time. Might even mean they've lost the DRS now on this back straight. We'll see in just a moment's time as they come across the line. It does not open. So, costly mistake for Cavino there means they're not going to be able to close in anymore this lap on Knactrack at all. But now they're going to have one eye on their rear view mirror, because whilst the hard tyres don't wear particularly harshly around this circuit, of course they can do all but one lap. Oh, and that's Coral. Coral off at the exit of turn 19. And they are in the wall there. Is that going to be another it's a full safety car. Now then.
Remen's going to be kicking himself. The other two people who got drive-throughs served them prior to the safety car. Remen chose not to.
Oh dear. And of course, as you rightly bring it up, you cannot serve a drive-through penalty under safety car. So, Raymond practically out of this race, I think it must be said at this point. They then are going to continue round, as you would imagine. They're on practically fresh tyres already, so given they're not allowed to serve that penalty, they will continue to pound round. But this then poses an interesting question for Fraser and Silver Arrow and Booth. And to a degree, Archduke Oregano at the front as well. Because those drivers, all still on the hard tyres they started this race on. By the time they get around this circuit, the rest of the field is going to have bunched up to them and gotten within that sort of range to maybe get past them. If they do, they're going to have fresh medium tyres, but of course those mediums are going to drop off massively towards the end of this race. It was around about, forgive me if I get the wrong number, but it was either 16 or 18 laps is what we were predicting in terms of the life of the medium tyres as a maximum life around this circuit. And right now, you'd be exceeding either one of those figures towards the end of this race.
I think there'll be another safety car, to be completely honest. This track is tight, there's lots of walls. You expect it, especially towards the end as people are sort of rolling the dice.
And dice very much rolled. The die is cast for Fraser, and into the pits they come. So too does Silver Arrow, both drivers onto a fresh set of medium tyres. And they will now plough on with the rest of this race. And hopefully, as far as they're concerned, have a good old time. Now Booth has come in just behind their teammate. That's about as quick a double stack as the game possibly allows. Now, will that mean that they get out ahead of Archduke Oregano? Yes, they do. So, nothing ventured, nothing gained. But in that case, Booth quite lucky to be able to get out ahead of the Aston Martin there, given how the game likes to punish teams that double stack.
Speaking of people getting Lukey, we've got Luke up into P4 now.
Yeah. Oh,
sorry,
dear.
I had to.
Well, yes, of course you did. So, that now means that we've got Luke back up in the top 4 after that enormous mistake at the start of lap number 3. It suddenly meant they're back in contention now. And alongside Spike, I would say that they're probably the two cars I would be more inclined to have a chance at winning this race, provided they don't make any mistakes at all. Because, of course, Fraser and Silver Arrow both going to be on fresh medium tyres now, as you can see on the graphic there. But despite that, as I say, I think that the likelihood of them getting the mediums to the end at full speed is pretty low. And therefore, if they are looking to, if they're trying to extend this stint, they're going to have to do a bit of tyre saving and therefore lose a bit of pace. Whereas the hard tyre runners behind them don't have to do that at all. 3 laps worth of wear on those hard tyres, amongst which will have been 1 lap under the delta of the safety car and so on. Really, that means that Spike and Luke can push now flat out all the way to the end. Same for Hugh Sam too.
In my experience, when these tyres go off at this track, it just starts feeling awful. So at around that 40% mark, the mediums will start feeling rubbish. They don't get much worse than that though. So you'll see that drop off at around the 40% mark, and then it should stay relatively consistent until they explode. So it will all be about whether they can keep the pace up once they go over 40%, because they will go over 40%.
There we are then. So whether or not that then pumps in as a factor in this one, as lap times are now being set 30 seconds slower than what they ordinarily would be. Well, let's maybe take one more glance at Mr. Fish.
Mr. Fish says not much doing.
Not much doing at all. So still only 10% chance of rain as the maximum chance that we see there in the next 60 minutes. And that 10% comes along in 30 minutes time from now. So as you can see then, fairly unlikely we're going to have those inclement weather conditions, but whilst they would spice up the action, it's I think we're shaping up for a fairly spicy end to this race regardless because of this offsetting tyre strategies. Now, of course, we do get another. Now, this is something that I do love here around this Miami circuit, is that in the game they have actual water. Of course, in the marina, we may not have seen that, given that I've just looked over and seen that we're on onboards at the moment. But
apologies.
Oh, don't worry about it. But yes, the marina
there
around this circuit.
Marina.
There we go. There we go. There it is, with all of its real water glory. Yes, I do find it quite amusing that that's the one thing in which the game is more realistic than the real thing. But there we are, and. Well, away we go once more then, and at this point, I'm just trying to fill as much time as possible here because we've talked about all the major talking points. Nobody's decided to chance on soft tyres. We've talked about the weather again. And,
all we can say is Cattle King's going to have nice warm tyres, considering he's had to steam up to the back of the pack compared to everyone else. So possibly maybe, going to be able to have the jump on those directly in front. I think Remen will probably dive. Actually, don't dive directly into the pits. I've seen people get caught out by that. If you dive in before that safety car despawns, it sometimes doesn't count it as a drive-through.
Dear oh dear then. That is something which potentially our dear friend Raymond will need to deal with. But we've now got Spike and Fraser and Silver Arrow, all of our last champions, I think I'm right in saying, some of the stats people can correct me on that if I'm wrong, lined up and ready to go for the restart of this race. So, Fraser takes him round turn 17 and through 18, nice and pedestrian, and then just after the apex of 18, he goes, he bolts. They are all away, racing again here in Miami, and Fraser's still trying to get some temperature into those tyres. A little bit of weaving down into turn number 1. Spike goes perhaps just a little bit deep there in the first turn, but as they all start to get underway once more, it looks like everything is working out for them. Raymond into the pits then to serve that drive-through penalty, and look at this, Silver Arrow very close to the back of Spike, just 1.5 tenths between the pair of them as they head through this very fast left-right-left section here before we then come into the left-hander that's very slow indeed. No DRS in operation, of course, because we had a full safety car rather than a virtual. And now, as they power out through the exit of the corner there, Fraser has, to give you a technical term, buggered off into the distance. 1.2 seconds, 1.3 seconds now the gap between them and Spike just behind. Now Spike's race is going to come towards the end of this race here with Fraser, but for Silver Arrow on those fresh tyres just behind Spike, they want to get past as soon as possible. Their only chance is to get by Spike as soon as possible, and you can see that from the onboard of Luke looking ahead to the two cars in front. And as they come through this section, then big oversteer moment for Luke, in fact. Massive oversteer moment. That puts them vulnerable to Booth behind. But as they power out, that's easily solved there. But Silver Arrow has now been able to reclaim P2 ahead of Spike. And now as they head down towards this final turn then, final couple of turns I should say, it's all going to be about on the brakes, and Silver Arrow has managed it. Booth has also managed to get alongside Luke then out of the exit of turn 17 through 18. Round the outside goes Booth. Fantastic move from them as Fraser sets a new fastest lap of this Grand Prix, a 1:30.6, and no one else seems to be setting anything faster so far. Through the first corner, and contact between Booth and Spike. Contact between the two cars. Spike then slams on the anchors, and their chances of winning this race goes up in flames. All because Booth just a bit too keen on the brakes there into the first corner, not taking into account, of course, the slightly worn hard tyres that Spike was using. And that now means that it's Hugh-Sam versus Luke here in this fight between hard tyre runners at the head of the field. And Silver Arrow now has a clear run down towards Fraser in front, but that is an enormous gap that they have to overcome. 2.4 seconds now after just 2 laps of full race running here, or 1.5 laps even. And now, further back, we can see Covino and Hugh-Sam duking it out between one another. The Ferrari on those medium tyres, able to get past the AlphaTauri. And now ahead, it is Luke versus Archduke, and it's very close between them, but it's not quite close enough for any moves to be happening anytime soon. And this is then the thing. So I think it must be said that in PC Division 1, you know, whilst they are the best drivers that we've got on the PC platform, and I'm not going to take that away from them in terms of their raw pace, I think that on more than one occasion this season now, we could have had Fraser not winning a race if drivers had behaved themselves a bit more and not gotten into silly collisions with one another that, frankly, could have been avoided. And that's certainly what has happened here on more than one occasion so far in this race. And it means then that now Fraser is practically unchallenged here in the latter stages of this race. Now again, Luke might become a factor later on, but they are currently over 7 seconds back from Fraser. So unless those hard tyres are going to give them that performance benefit versus mediums that will be worn down by the end of this race, of which I doubt, then it's potentially another Fraser win here today, because Silver Arrow doesn't seem to be convincingly closing them down. The gap is staying around about where it is, if not extending by a tenth or two per lap, and we've got more yellow flags now, further back in the field, at the start of Sector 2, end of Sector 1, and it's Civic, these drivers who are all very close together. Civic, you think they're Ghost, but further up the order, we've got Spike then, close to the back of Castle King. And the thing with Spike that I'm struggling to understand here is that they slammed on the anchors. They were pointing the right way on the exit of Turn 1. And they didn't really get going until a number of cars had gotten past them and a number of cars were still behind them. And so I wonder whether there was just a moment of frustration there as to whether they thought they were just going to park it and stop, or whether there was an active decision on their part to just go ahead and keep it stopped to keep things safe. Now, Covino's been able to get by Luke as we go down the back straight here. The Ferrari up now into P4. And that means now we've got medium tyre runners all the way from P1 to 4 with Luke, Hugh Sam, Candle King and Spike then being the hard tyre runners behind.
Yeah, so I think we've had, with Spike there, I think he had just lost the back end, and obviously you want to stay stationary, especially with the number of cars that were directly behind. He didn't want to get hit by someone. He had no damage. I would rather keep the car in one piece in case a safety car came up rather than risk taking damage and being forced to box.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's, speaking of boxing, Booth has decided to come into the pits, get their front wing changed, and get onto a set of soft tyres. I doubt very much they're going to make it to the end of that race, so I say good luck to Booth. Now, they, in terms of any battles that we have on circuit, well, closest one currently is between the Ferrari and the Red Bull. Awfully apt considering the battle that has been raging this season between the real-life drivers, but that is Cavino versus Luke, but Cattle King and Spike have both gotten by Hugh Sam on that back straight. Look at Spike now, going round the outside in turn number 12 there, but then just being able to be muscled out by Cattle King there as they head up into 14 and 15. That quick left-right in the underneath the overpass, and then through 16 and down towards 17 we go then. And Spike with the fresher hard tyres, better exit out of that corner with the DRS now as well, opening up on that Alpine. They get back up into P6 so far in this race.
I was hoping for a better camera angle from Cody's, was not to be.
Well, you know, these things happen. Codemasters can only give us what what they decide. And what they've decided is clearly not great. But there we go. We can obviously wax lyrical about Codemasters all day. And we're aware that they know who we are. And we're also aware that their game is not in the best of conditions right now. So I think the criticism is more than justified. So, through the next section of circuit we go then, and we've got now Cavino very close to the back of Archduke. They've been able to drag Luke up with them towards the back of the Aston Martin here. Still this fight going on between Hugh Sam and Naktrack down towards the back of the field. Let's have a look at Hugh Sam. In fact, they're very, very close to the back of Naktrack, just 2 tenths between the two of them. This could be some very brave late braking up the inside, down in towards turn number 11, unless, of course, Naktrack defends the inside. And no, as it turns out then, very early braking for Hugh Sam as they continue on, but Cavino is now very, very close to the back of Archduke. Just about 2 tenths between the Ferrari and the Aston as they come out now onto the back straight. This is where there's going to be DRS available, and Archduke's going to need to be careful here, because if they end up losing their position to Cavino, as I suspect they might do, they've got that flashing red light on the back of that Aston Martin, but they've then got to be careful that Luke doesn't follow Cavino through here. Now, I say all that, it is not a move up the inside for Cavino on this occasion. Instead, they still continue to sit in behind. Now, is that a sign that perhaps there's more downforce on Cavino's car? Possibly, because, to my mind, Archduke shouldn't have been able to defend that. They should have been overtaken fairly easily, but there we are.
It's amazing how important the drive out of that slow section is, and it could be that Archduke was just going slower than he would normally to make sure that he gets that drive down that back straight. Doing that, you can be a little bit slower in that slow section, but you can make sure that you're reasonably well defended. But downforce will be critical. That should have been a track limits warning if I am not mistaken, based on practice races there for Cavino.
Absolutely, but look at this. This fight is not over. And look now as Hugh Sam heads down toward... not Hugh Sam. What am I talking about? Cavino heads down towards turn number 11. They have the Aston Martin in their sights. They have DRS. The Aston does not. Up to the inside goes Cavino. Late braking into turn number 11. And it's a good move. It's a good move that's then defended well in turn number 12 as well. And that is another position gained and a Ferrari on the podium here today. Now then, as they head through into turn 16, on this run now down towards turn 17, it looks like Cavino's been able to get a good gap out on Archduke so far on the course of this lap, but Archduke, with that very low downforce setup we imagine that they have, now has DRS, is closing in. All the way down to turn number 17 we go then. It's up to the inside. The Aston Martin says, thank you very much. I'll take that position back from you. But now it's a switchback from Cavino. They get that better exit. They get up the inside in turn 18. That's outside in turn number 19. As they head down towards turn number 1, it's going to be DRS for the Ferrari once more. But I think then that lack of straight line speed versus the Aston is going to mean that they end up having to hang it round the outside of turn number 1. Now through turns 2 and 3 they go. They've got a better exit through turn number 3, but can they do anything with it. No, they can't. It's that straight line speed on the Aston Martin keeping them ahead, because certainly through the corners, Cavino is all over the back of them. All over the back of Cavino as well is Luke. Luke here very close to this battle that is continuing to fight on here. And now, as they all head round into Sector 2, Cavino is around about... I was going to say see their timings there, but I unfortunately did not. So Luke is about 9/10 back on their personal best. But now, as they look to the inside of Cavino this time, doesn't end up going for the move. But all of this is only helping the likes of Silverarrow and Fraser up at the front, because there's now a 10-second gap from Archduke to Silverarrow. So around about a 14-second gap or so from Archduke to Fraser. And that then means that the advantage of the hard tyre, which Luke has, and Spike as well, who's closing in on this battle, bearing in mind, is slowly fading away. But the DRS and the straight line setups are so powerful that it is stopping these guys from really being able to affect any sort of action further up the order here. Now, I say all that. Round turn number 17, we go, whoa, and there it is! Luke, all of a sudden, just sending one up the inside. Much better traction than the Ferrari. And look now! Luke, with a sensational couple of moves in the last couple of corners, and they go up 2 positions in as many corners, and that then is a fantastic display from the Red Bull Racing driver. They get up into P3 onto the podium, and now then let's keep an eye on their lap times. If they are able to get themselves with closing in on the likes of Silverarrow, then all of a sudden this race gets interesting once more. Now, it's going to need to be an awful lot of time that they gain here, because we're now about 9 laps until the end of this Grand Prix, and there is a 15-second or so gap from them to the race leader. So if Fraser makes mistakes, maybe picks up some time penalties, that of course will help in terms of Luke getting their win this year. The first it will be for them this year. But in terms of the fight that we're seeing between them and Cavino, now Cavino had DRS, so did Archduke as they went down there. Cavino has now gotten by Archduke in that squabble between the two of them, but crucially, because they've been squabbling so much, Luke has now been able to scamper away and get over a second ahead as they head... Oh, now this is going to be very close as they head through the DRS detection zone. I think that Archduke will have, or Cavino may well have gotten that. Over the DRS line they go. Yes, Cavino has it, but so does Archduke. So now it's just down to their difference in setup. So look between the Aston and the Ferrari here. Archduke goes round the outside, but Cavino goes heavy and late on the brakes. And now that means they're able to defend. They're able to keep their position. But
did they lose DRS?
It means that all that's... Say again, sorry?
Did they lose DRS? They did. They lost DRS to the Red Bull in front.
They lost DRS, yep. Absolutely, that's what I was going to go on to say. So crucially, that loss of DRS means then that Luke goes ahead. Will now be able to go through these next few corners and gain time over Archduke. And then by the time they get to the DRS detection point for then that straight down towards turn number 11, that is going to be all she wrote as far as Archduke getting onto the back of Luke, I believe. Now, I could be proven wrong. There could be a mistake on Luke's part here, but they just need to now focus on pumping in some good lap times, getting away from those drivers who were threatening them behind, and instead start to reel in Silverarrow in front. Now, that all being said and done, Luke has not really been able to gain all that much on Silverarrow over this previous lap, so we're going to have to wait and see as, there was an Aston there who was off to one side. That was Civic, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was just checking whether it was going to be a safety car. It wasn't.
Yeah, there we are.
Crucially, though, Spike has now arrived on the scene with Cavino and Archduke.
Certainly has, and we know that Spike, once they
Archduke's
get racing... Oh, Archduke! Archduke off into the wall, and is that another safety car? It doesn't look like it. Archduke has been able to keep the car going. They are not DNF'd in this race, so we continue. But certainly their hopes of getting back onto the podium are dashed, and so too are Cavino's. They have been overtaken by Spike, and now Spike has 2.6 seconds to catch Luke and get themselves onto the podium here today. Down onto the start-finish straight they go then, Alpine versus Ferrari. And I suspect then that there's not going to be anything that Cavino can really do here. No, so into turns 1, 2 and 3 they go then. And whilst Cavino is close, I don't think we're going to see any re-overtake from them at all anytime soon. That being said, I've been known to be wrong in the past. Last time was about 12 years ago. But there we go. So Spike continues to pump in some good lap times here, but now as they come round this left-hander, they're wide of the apex, and that means then that Cavino is in a good position to capitalize here. Now, whether or not there's then a bit of, you can see there's a flashing red light on the back of Spike's Alpine, viewed from Cavino there, and now as they head down towards turn number 11 and 12, I suppose, there is DRS for Cavino, but they're not really able to gain all that much, so Spike clearly has a good setup underneath him for defending in a straight line, but through the corners perhaps they've not got quite as much downforce. So through they go now onto the back straight, and wide of the apex in 16 once more, but now as they head onto that back straight we go, and Cavino does not have the same traction now. Those medium tyres are starting to beg for mercy, and as we see them all head down towards that final proper braking zone that we see on the circuit, Spike is continuing to just maintain their position. They're not really gaining all that much over Cavino, but they're also not really losing that much either. They're also not gaining all that much over Luke in front, who in turn is not gaining anything over Silver Arrow. In fact, they are losing time versus Silver Arrow in front of them. So really right now, this is turning into one of those races where we've got only really one battle on circuit at the moment, and the rest of it all seems to be decided, unfortunately. So
we have had a couple of the drivers further back pit for fresh softs in the last couple of laps. I think we've got Remen and Booth both on those fresh softs, so we might see some of the guys in sort of that P8, P7 position decide, hey, I want to bite at the fastest lap, but it feels like a lot of people are settling for being at the back end of the points and just trying to get some fastest laps now.
Absolutely. So there we are. Raymond overtakes Hugh Sam whilst the latter is in the pits. So does Cattle King. Booth, I imagine, is going to come by any second now. Yes, they are. But will Hugh Sam be able to make it out ahead of the Mercedes? That's the real question. Yes, they do. Now, of course, they're going to have to get those soft tyres. Sorry, again?
I didn't have the right stream up. I have my hand away. I've got them now.
Oh, don't worry. Don't worry at all. I mean, this is all academic now anyway, because around this circuit you can get some great racing. We've seen it before in other leagues, in career modes that we've all done, I think, maybe. I mean,
what's amazed me is that we've got no track limit penalties. I know that
we have no track limit penalties, yeah.
I know that it's not a track where it's easy to go off because there are walls, but there are a couple of corners which are, let's say, a little bit tetchy. Should you try? Oh, Cavino losing the rear end a little bit under traction again. But yeah, there's a couple of corners which are tetchy, notably towards the big left-hander towards the end of Sector 1, and that little corner in Sector 2 through the Mickey Mouse section, where you try and cut it, but if you cut it that little bit too much, you'll get a warning. So guess I'm just used to driving in lower divisions.
I can give you the lowdown as far as the track limits are concerned. Now, currently, a number of drivers have been given warnings, but it's not a rap sheet longer than my arms, as it has been in the past in certain FRS races, and at circuits where it is much easier, as you say, to end up doing that. Nordi in the Alpine has got a warning, 2 warnings in fact, so 1 more warning for Nordi, and they will. No, I say that Nordi's out the race, aren't they? So never mind. That's a whole load of nonsense on my part. False Flags, of course, is out at the start of this race as well. In terms of other warnings for exceeding track limits, Civics had one, Hugh Sam's had one, Civics had a second one, Civics had a speeding under VSC. In terms of then exceeding track limits, Hugh Sam's had a second one as well. So Hugh Sam and Civic, 2 drivers who, if they were to get another warning, end up taking themselves a time penalty, and then Spike and Cavino also with 1 warning each. As now, to the outside goes Hugh Sam, round the outside of Cattle King. Fresh soft tyres versus 8-lap-old mediums, and it was fairly academic in the end. So, Hugh Sam continues on their crusade to try and get themselves back up into P8 and potentially steal a point for fastest lap as well. Big slide on the back end of that AlphaTauri though, and that might then give them a bit of a problem as they head down the back straight here. It is a purple second sector for them. They're going to get no DRS, but the Haas behind probably will. Yeah, there we go. The Haas opens up the rear wing, but I don't think they are going to end up making any overtake at the end of this straight here, as Raymond is just ahead, gets round that final turn. And Knacktrack is in the pits now also for a fresh set of soft tyres. They have decided that is the best course of action. They're going to get overtaken by Raymond, I think.
I don't think so.
Actually, no, they're at pit exit already.
Yeah.
No, so there we go. Knacktrack already out and ahead of Raymond. They're going to have to spend this lap getting the tyres up to temperature, but then they will be able to go for a fastest lap attempt of their own at the end of the next lap. So There we go. And yeah,
So
unfortunately,
sort of
it is now
slow pass of the soft tyre pit going down through the field. So we had obviously Booth, Husam, Remen, and it's just sort of slowly passing forward. So maybe Archduke will decide to go next.
potentially. Yeah, I mean, you never know. As they've got nothing to lose.
Points or not?
Yeah. So there we are then. We're lap 26 of 29 here in this Miami Grand Prix. At this point, Silver Arrow has been closing back in on Fraser, but not by convincing enough margin to really be able to mount a challenge against the McLaren driver towards the end of this race. So we've now got yellow flags in Sector 3, as that is an Alpine that is round. That is Spike. Spike has lost it on the exit of turn 18. And now they have decided to go in for a fresh set of tyres as well, presumably for a fastest lap attempt. They've also got a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane.
Oh,
so it all
rage.
goes from bad to oh,
DNF'd.
and they have decided enough is enough. And whilst the Alpine mechanics do go ahead and replace the front wing and replace the tyres, we unfortunately say goodbye to Spike in the course of this race.
Is that a safety car?
That is a safety car. That is a safety car. Oh,
For a
now
car retired in the pit lane.
Now, that's of course not Spike's fault. That is the game just doing F122 things. But, crucially, that now means that we're going to have a little bit of a sprint to the end here. As, oh dear. As Silver Arrow just clouted the wall, I wonder. As I just switched them, I don't know whether that's a connection problem for me or whether they genuinely have. From the off-board show, it doesn't look like they have. Yeah, it doesn't look like they've lost the front wing. So on they go. 3-second time penalty for Cavino.
Here they come.
So they've gone from 1 warning to 3 in a very, very quick period of time.
In Fraser's position, do you pit? You do. I was going to say I would if I was in his shoes. You're only losing one position.
Apparently they do. So does Silver Arrow. And Luke, then, I suspect, is not going to be able to overtake those guys either because, of course, driving to a delta under the first lap of safety car conditions, that means that they, in addition to then the great big slide that they've done there, they now go into the pits. So they're going to lose position to Cavino, unless Cavino also goes to the pitch, which they do. So everybody is going to be on brand new softs at the end of this race. That's going to be interesting.
Indeed. Fortunately for Civic, with those guys pitting, I think he managed to beat the safety car. He got himself unlapped, so he will still be on the lead lap. Absolutely. So there we go then. That is very lucky for Angelo Civic, but yeah, that's it's a real shame actually that we've got so few laps remaining because this could have the potential to be absolute fireworks here, but. I think that it guarantees 2 laps of full racing, so it'll come in at the end of this lap, so I don't think the entire field's going to get bunched.
No, so this is going to be an interesting
Div 3, sorry.
Yeah, and well then, we've now got... Well, we've now got an interesting scenario here, because everybody can now, of course, run at full speed to get onto the back of the safety car. I'm sure the drivers themselves will be aware that, of course, this is the point where, only 2 laps remaining after this one, so therefore the safety car is more than likely to come in at the end of this one. Luke has managed to catch the back of the train now. Cavino will join them shortly as well, so Naktrack is now the next driver who's going to try and get onto the back of these cars incredibly quickly.
I think Naktrack and Archduke can make it.
Slow. Yeah, I think so. I think through that very slow section, the safety car doesn't have the downforce, it doesn't have the performance that the F1 cars do. And now, in addition to that, Fraser is going to, Fraser's going to have to start slowing the pack up here, although they're not going to want to slow them up too much, of course, because that just invites more people to get onto the back of them and potentially be a threat to them at the end of this race. Now, I was talking earlier on about how we've had incidents before where we've had drivers coming together in unnecessary accidents. Is that going to happen again towards the end of this race? Fraser has bolted in that same position they've liked to over the course of this race so far. Silver Arrow follows them through, but Luke is close behind. We've then got Cavino, Naktrack and Archduke all close, so it's a fight between the top 6 here for the race win. Now, Fraser goes through the turn 1 and 2 and through this first part, the first sector. They are burning as much ERS as they possibly can to try and get away from Silver Arrow, but Silver Arrow is burning in kind. And now, as they head through into this next part of the circuit, all the cars are going to be going absolutely fast as they can be. Quali laps, to be sure. And now, as I head through onto the start of Sector 2, then, it is Fraser leading by just 0.8 of a second from Silver Arrow, who is 0.4 ahead of Luke, who in turn is 0.5 ahead of Cavino, 0.7 ahead of Nakchank, and 1 second ahead of Archduke. Archduke being a bit outclassed here by the top 5 on this safety car restart, it seems.
Fraser has just broken that 1 second bubble to Silver Arrow. He'll be hoping he can make it back before the end of the lap. I guess, actually, no, you're not going to get any DRS anyway.
DRS. No DRS, exactly. Yeah. So DRS complete non-factor here in the ending of this race. But it's all going to come down to then whether there's any mistakes under pressure. We know that Fraser is cool as a cucumber. Same can be said of Silver Arrow as well. So these drivers unlikely to make mistakes under pressure towards the end of this race. But are they crucially going to have enough in the tank to be able to defend from one another? Now, Fraser has burned more ERS than Silver Arrow has over the course of this lap here. And so it is now going to be a question of will that extra 20% or so be enough for Silver Arrow to be able to make a charge and try and get onto the back of Fraser. Fraser sets a new fastest lap of this Grand Prix, 1:28.2. That's unlikely to be beaten given how fast and how absolutely dominant they have been today. And given that the rest of the field has tyres either the same age or older than them. Now, through this first sector they go. Fraser continuing to still be at the head of this field, unlikely to be challenged. Luke is very close now to reclaiming that position from Silver Arrow that they got at the start of this race, and then lost out, of course, chasing after Fraser in the earlier parts of the first post-safety car period that we had. Now, down into Sector 2 we go. At the front of the field, it is still Luke trying to chase on after Silver Arrow. They are closing in, though. They head down towards turn number 11. Is this going to be a brave moment from the Red Bull driver? Red Bull versus Mercedes down into turn number 11. No overtake this time, although into 12 they go. And it is now just 0.2 of a second between the two cars into this slow section. It's all going to be about the exit. All going to be about the exit down towards turn 17 and whether or not the Red Bull has the measure of the Mercedes. Now they get the power on. Things are very close indeed. The Mercedes is burning up all of its ERS. It's going to lose ERS well before the Red Bull does. And now closing in is Luke. Luke getting closer and closer all the time then as they close in down into turn 17, late on the brakes, but it's not enough.
It's enough to scare him off the apex, so have another try.
Fraser comes round the final turn and will win the Miami Grand Prix. Silver Arrow manages to fend off Luke for second, and Luke then takes third place, takes that podium. Nakchank manages to come home in fourth after time penalties are applied for Cavino, and Archduke Oregano will also inherit a position. Now then is the fight at the back of the field, but all those drivers all far too far apart from one another. So across the line comes Raymond. Will they lose position through time penalties to Booth? I doubt it, but along comes Booth. Across the line they will come, and they stay in P8. It'll then be Candle King, Hugh Sam, and Civic to round out this order, unless, of course, we see a massive mistake from Hugh Sam, as Candle King has now crossed the line as well. And Civic then comes down the back straight. It doesn't look very fast from the offboards, but I assure you they are pressing near 200 miles an hour there, and into the heavy braking zone they come. Take that final proper turn. Through 18 and 19 they will come, and they will be our last finisher here in the Miami Grand Prix.
Well, that was a finish, wasn't it?
It was something. It would have been more interesting, I think, if Fraser had not gone into the pits. But there we are. Fraser just scampering away from the field in that way that they do. And why this boy has not been picked up for F1 Esports yet, I do not know. But there we are. So, Fraser takes their, by my reckoning, 5th win of the season. Might just be their 4th. But there we go. It's, as I say, we need the standings updated on PC Division 1 to be able to give us the results of Silverstone last time out. But there we are. That was a commanding win for Fraser. It could have been something different at the earlier part of this race if we'd seen, you know, drivers be able to execute their strategies without safety cars and virtual safety cars. But as it is then, that is another win and another big stretch in the championship lead for Fraser on their hunt for a second crown. So then, to give you that full rundown of the results once more, that is Fraser from Silver Arrow, then Luke, Nakchank, Archduke, Oregano, then Cavino, Raymond, Booth, Cattle King, Hugh Sam, Civic, Spike, Coral, Nordy, and then False Tax, who of course lost it at the very start of this race by crashing on the start, finish straight on the very first lap. So there we are then. Ghost, any final thoughts from you before you have to then disappear off to your race in PC Division 4?
Wow. I didn't even
3.
realise it was
I forget which one it is.
I'm
Which
Div
one are
4
you?
this
I don't want to be
season.
rude.
Div
You
4
are
this
Div 4,
season.
okay.
I'm now predicting an awful lot of safety cars and thus have adjusted my strategy accordingly. But yes, interesting race. Definitely that low drag setup working wonders for some of the drivers here. I may just bolt it on and see if I can keep it on the track. But yes, incredibly enthralling race. I didn't even realise it was the last lap. So yeah, I'll trot off to my car now and maybe see you another time.
Absolutely, you may well do. So thanks very much then to Ghost for jumping at the last minute to help us out with this stream. Otherwise, we would have been in a bit of a pickle, I think it must be said. Potentially no Div 1 action at all this evening if he'd not been around. So big thanks go to him. So I'd like to see that in the Twitch chat and in the Discord server, please, everybody watching. And all that remains for me to say is thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will see you after our break week, and then we will be going to the Hungara Ring, which has produced some fantastic FRS races in the past. Thank you very much then from me, and good morning, good afternoon, and good night.